How do you choose your career? In my case, it started from an absolute disaster. That was a foot and mouth outbreak in 1969, and it kept us off the riverbanks for almost a year. Luckily for me, during that time, there was a guy running a rod building course and evening classes at the local school. So I enrolled in the course, and it was very interesting. He taught us, those that attended, he taught us how all the materials were made, the fiberglass, the rod rings, and everything to do, how it was manufactured, what was going on, and more importantly, after you've got your chosen blank, how to build your own fishing rods. In my case, I hadn't got a feeder rod, or a ledger rod as it was called in those days. So I picked out a blank which happened to be similar to a Mark IV Avon, which is a two-piece 11-foot rod, and I picked out what I was going to use to attach the reel. I couldn't afford a Fuji reel attachment, so I just had rings, and he showed us how to build the rods, and it was very interesting. And we spent, I think it was about 8 or 10 weeks, bit at home, bit at work, learning how to assemble the corks on the rod, how to shape your rod, a handle, and all things like that. I found it very interesting. And also how Fuji rod rings or glides were made, and how they did the inserts, which was ceramic in those days. And I did find this very interesting. And eventually I built myself what I considered to be a lovely rod, which was well balanced, and unfortunately I can't show it to you because about 8 years after I had it and caught a lot of fish with it, some lowlife broke into my tackle shed and stole all my tackle. But that's how my career started, and I'll tell you how. I decided I was going to carry on in the butchers that I was working in, but the careers officer at school had also suggested that I apply to a few engineering companies, as I was quite good at technical drawing and a little bit of woodwork and metalwork, and I wouldn't say skilled, but I had an aptitude. And I'd been working in the butchers, and they'd actually offered me an apprenticeship. And after I'd sort of thought about it and that, and been there, and heard that the local council were about to change the town centre, which meant losing the local butcher's shop, and while I had supermarkets and that coming in, I was not sure what to do. And luckily I had a letter to say I'd got an interview in an engineering company. So I turned up for this interview with my father, because that's what you did in those days, and I was invited in and went for this interview, and they said, "What do you know about engineering?" And I went, "Not a lot, I didn't really know anything." And then he said, "Well, what are your interests?" And I told him I went fishing, and we spoke a little bit about that. And then I said I did find something very interesting that I'd done recently through the foot and mouth outbreak, and that was building a fishing rod and going into all composite materials and specialist adhesives and different things, and I found it very interesting. And the guy I had the interview with was obviously a very good design engineer, and he said, "Oh, you've got a lot of knowledge in that." And I said, "Yeah." And eventually, after I'd walked around the factory and seen what was what, I was actually offered a position as an apprentice, and that's what I did. And engineering, hydraulic engineering actually, became my career for 49 years, and that's how partly fishing got me into engineering. Catch you later.